I'm a big believer in stories. And in fact, if you've listened to any of our podcasts, if you've read any of my blogs, if you've gone to any of our seminars or programs, you're going to find that we have a high concentration of stories in our own personal content and the way that we teach other people how to deliver content. The reason why is because stories are just a fantastic way to capture people's attention, hold the attention over a longer period of time. You build rapport with the audience, you build your own credibility. So there's just lots of great things that stories will do for you. The main thing that stories do, though, is they help you reduce your nervousness. And so it's much easier to kind of get into a good story than to deliver just a bunch of data or a bunch of bullet points. So a good way to end your presentation is with a story as well. Give you a good example of this. I was doing a breakout session for a big convention a couple of weeks ago, and it was about how to design a technical presentation. And so I started my presentation with a story about my first day in macroeconomics class in college, which, by the way, was really boring. And I told that story, or I gave a description of that first day of the economics class in a very over-exaggerated way to make it kind of funny, right? So at the end of the presentation, I gave a success story. So I told the kind of the negative, basically what I'm doing at the beginning is what I'm saying, if you don't do these things that I'm suggesting that you do, you have the likelihood of being boring without ever having to tell them that. And then at the end, I gave a success story about somebody who went through my presentation class, delivered a really data-intensive thing. I actually worked for the Center for Disease Control's, the CDC, and he had to give a really data-intensive presentation. And of course, he nailed it. So at the end, he got lots of great compliments from the people that are in the audience. So I just kind of told that in the form of a story. I told that story about what he did and used that as my ending. And again, the subtle thing that I'm telling them is, hey, if you do the things that I'm suggesting that you do, you'll have a great ending. So those two contrasting stories, one at the negative one at the beginning, and then the really positive one at the end, it can be a great way to kind of sandwich the presentation. So just like what we did with the summary, we did the introduction at the beginning and then the summary at the end. So the endings that you choose, if they have some type of relation with the way that you started, it makes it more fun, more interesting, more memorable, and the audience will really like it more. If you're struggling for content, you're just like, where can I get funny stories, or how can I end on a really positive note? You can do an anecdote. So anecdotes are kind of funny stories. Sometimes they're kind of jokes, but they're not really. I don't really tell them as jokes. I kind of use them as teaching points. And a good place to get these is from Reader's Digest. So you can actually go to rd.com. By the way, we'll put all the information for the links that we're providing for you in the show notes. So make sure and go to fearlesspresentations.com, go to the blog section, and you'll see the show notes for this particular podcast or the section. So if you go to rd.com, readersdigest.com, they have a special section called jokes, and a lot of times they're going to be punchline, like one-liners and that kind of thing, which those aren't really helpful for us. But you'll get into the funny stories or the funny incidents, and a lot of times you can kind of use those fairly easily. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm training new instructors is to kind of show them how to use these funny stories in their classes. A lot of times people think of classes as being boring. So if you can insert something funny or interesting, it makes it more fun for the audience. So I like to challenge my new instructors to say, hey, go to Reader's Digest, find some funny story, and if you like it, I'm going to insert it into the class that we're teaching somewhere along the way. And one of the instructors that I was teaching, she had a sense of humor as well. So she picked an anecdote about a woman who was sick at work, and the anecdote was fairly short and sweet, but it was basically a woman was not feeling well, and so she goes to her boss to say, hey, I think I'm going to need to take the rest of the day off. And the boss, having just gotten over a cold himself, said, oh my gosh, I hope it's not something I gave you. Well, one of the other coworkers who overheard this whole conversation piped up, and he said, God, I hope not. She's got morning sickness. So it's just in a very short, easy way. It's kind of a funny story. So that was the one she gave me. So she picked that one out of Reader's Digest. And like I said, she had a sense of humor as well. I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm teaching a presentation skills class. How in the world am I going to insert that into my seminar, into my workshop? So I ended that story, or ended that presentation with a story and then concluded with, so one of the big things about designing your presentation is kind of knowing your audience. And so I just found a way to tie it in. So sometimes you can kind of take those funny anecdotes and tie them into your presentation a little bit. Sometimes you have to get a little creative, but if you can do that, it'll make the ending of your presentation really, come off with a bang and make it more fun.